Hello everyone, my name is Anitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So taking a look at BT04, we definitely got a whole lot of new and powerful tools that we could insert into some older decks from older formats and give them some new life and new legs. So today's deck that I'm going to be taking a look at and updating is going to be Blue Omnimon. So yes, Blue Omnimon, for the most part, has fallen out of favor, and a lot of people have preferred to play Red Omnimon just because Red still has some very powerful tools and they have access to a second Omnimon, so that way they can kind of toolbox it and pick and choose which Omnimon fits the situation the best. Blue doesn't necessarily have that, but Blue still has lots of good consistency tools, and Blue has a lot of interesting things that you could do with it, all depending on the type of tech that you're going to be doing. But again, at the end of the day, the whole point of this deck is to just get into Omnimon as fast as you possibly can, and to try to win off of the back of Omnimon, just because he is still a very powerful Digimon to be working with. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Upamon. So Upamon is still going to be the main Digitama of the deck just because it's a really good card draw engine where it has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn, if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in it in play, then you get to draw 1 card. So this is still just a solid way of drawing cards because it isn't necessarily hard to get the opponent to have a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in it, especially thanks to Digiburst, on top of which if they just hardcast something, then it just naturally won't have any Digivolution sources in it. So Upamon is still just one of the best, if not the best, generic Digitama that we currently have access to. And then the 5th Digitama of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Bukamon. So Bukamon is a pretty decent Digitama, and I definitely feel like Bukamon is kind of slept on. But regardless, Bukamon is in here just because he is the 5th Digitama, and what he's doing is still just generically good. Even though it's not drawing us cards, it could still be a little bit disruptive and a little bit obnoxious to deal with for the opponent. So what he's doing is he has this nice inheritable ability where when attacking, you get to trash at the bottom Digivolution source off of one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. So this is acting similar to the Gabumon from the blue starter deck, except this is on a Digitama, and it's an ability that we can actually sometimes use versus an ability where it's just rarely going to go off. So I definitely prefer Bukamon as the 5th Digitama, but again, it could be really anything you feel like you wanted to run. I just feel like Bukamon is just one of the better ones that we currently have. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Elecmon. So Elecmon is just that value-efficient vanilla card where he just has a low play cost, low evo cost, and some decent DP for his level, just making him a very good card to run overall. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gabumon. So this is the BT01 version of Gabumon, and this Gabumon is still really good just because he has this nice on-play ability where you get to draw 1 card. So for hard playing the card from your hand, he rewards you for drawing cards. So usually in this type of a meta for BT04, you want to try to keep your Digimon in raising as long as you can. So having Gabumon to help you draw cards while playing your Digimon just helps with the overall game plan, so that way you can consistently try to see as many cards as you possibly can, and that's just what makes Gabumon really, really good. It is a tiny bit unfortunate that he only has 1000 DP, but it's not that big of a deal considering you just are playing him just to try to play him and try to get some initial value off of his on-play ability. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Gaomon. So Gaomon is a pretty decent rookie to be playing around with because he has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when this card is trashed due to the activation of a Digiburst ability, then you get to return this card from your trash to your hand. So this is really good because we are going to be playing around with a little bit of Digiburst, and we are running a slightly lower rookie count, so the fact that we have Gaomon to basically be able to recycle some of our rookies is just really, really good, on top of him just interacting with the Digiburst mechanic. So again, it just is a really good card to be running for the deck, and this is going to be the primary card you want to Digivolve your Digitamas into. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gorillamon. So Gorillamon is really only in here for 2 reasons. The first reason is he has a really low evo cost, so that way we could quickly digivolve into him and digivolve off of him, and he's just really good for that type of tempo efficiency. And then the other big reason is the fact that he actually has 6000 DP, which a lot of people are running the 5k blockers, so if you need to aggress with Gorillamon, then he's at least able to swing over the opponent's Digimon, so that way you could at least try to aggress with Gorillamon. So he's a pretty decent card for those 2 reasons alone, thus why we definitely want to run him. On top of which, we don't care about the fact that he doesn't have any inheritable abilities, because we are going to be playing with Digiburst, so half the time he's just going to be thrown away anyway. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Tobiumon. So Tobiumon is in here for very similar reasons to Gorillamon, where the first big reason why we're playing him is, again, he has that low evo cost, so we could just utilize him to evo really fast and really efficiently into our higher levels. And then instead of him having lots of DP, this time Tobiumon has a really low play cost, and we definitely really want to hard play Tobiumon sometimes, just because he basically has the same play cost as a rookie, except he's a level 4, and sometimes we just won't have our level 3s, so we do need to have a card to kind of act as a pseudo level 3, so Tobiumon is definitely fulfilling that role as well, all making Tobiumon just a very fantastic card to be running. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Lobomon. So Lobomon is really only in here just because he could help steal games, because he has this really powerful ability where you could digivolve him from your hand on top of one of your blue tamers as if that tamer was a level 3 Digimon. So this basically just allows you to try to steal some games where you just bust all of the opponent's security and then digivolve your tamer into Lobomon, and then Lobomon can act as an extra swing, allowing you to just take the game. So that's the only real reason why Lobomon is in the deck, just because we have that potential to just steal games with him. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Grizzlymon. So Grizzlymon is Blue's dedicated blocker, and blockers are still good to run. Even though we don't have our 1 Evo 5k blocker, it doesn't necessarily matter just because we still want to have a blocker, and Grizzlymon is the only one we really have that we want to be utilizing. Next, on to the Ultimates, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Monzaemon. So Monzaemon is still a pretty decent Digimon just because, again, he is a very tempo-efficient card where he has this really low Evo cost for 2, and he also has a really low play cost of 5, which just allows us to hard play him and then go straight into a Mega, thus threatening Omnimon at any time. So Monzaemon is just really fantastic for being that good tempo card. The only downside to the card is he has 6000 DP, which there's a lot more cards that can hit and remove 6000 DP cards, so you do have to be careful when you hard play him, but most of the time you're really just going to be trying to evo him for 2 anyway. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Bastemon. So Bastemon is in the deck for very similar reasons to Monzaemon, just because the primary goal of the card is to just utilize its really low Evo cost to just get up into it and get up off of it as fast as we possibly can. And then on top of that, she does have 8000 DP, which is a little bit on the higher side compared to a lot of other level 5s in the game, which is just really good because it allows us to aggress with the card if we actually need to. So she's just another very good tempo card that is just working very nicely with the deck. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of MachGaogamon. So MachGaogamon is an absolutely insane level 5 for the deck to be playing around with because he has a native ability and inheritable ability that are both really, really good. So what his main ability is its Digiburst 2, and his Digiburst 2 ability allows you to return one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon back to their hand, and then all of their evolution sources gets trashed. So this is really good because we could just Digivolve up into Mach in Raising, then bring Mach out of Raising, utilize his Digiburst ability, bounce hopefully one of the opponent's blockers, and then we could start being aggressive because now we cleared one of their blockers. Or if we just need to bounce any level 4 or lower Digimon, then we have access to do that as well. And then, like I said, we have Digiburst Synergy, so it just interacts with Gaomon, making Gaomon that much more efficient. And on top of all of that, He even has a really good inheritable ability where during your turn, while you have a tamer in play, then this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP. So this card is shoring up two big weaknesses that Blue has had as a whole, where its first big weakness is it doesn't have a lot of meaningful ways to interact with the opponent's Digimon, so the Digiburst ability helps us do that. And Blue isn't necessarily known for having much of any increasing their DP potential, so the fact that MachGaogamon also could increase our Digimon's DP makes the card that much better to want to run. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of ZeedGarurumon. So ZeedGarurumon is a pretty decent card overall because he has this nice when Digivolving ability of Digiburst 2, where you get to return one of the opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon back to their hand. So again, Zeed is kind of fulfilling a very similar role that Mach is, where the whole purpose of the card is to try to utilize him to interact with the opponent's Digimon, because again, Blue doesn't really have good meaningful ways of doing that before, so the fact that we have Zeed to just Digivolve up into him, and then utilize his Digiburst, which again synergizes with Gaomon, to just bounce one of the opponent's level 5 Digimon could be a huge tempo swing, especially if the opponent doesn't see it coming or can't avoid the Zeed. Then it just makes it really, really good. On top of which, Zeed has some pretty decent stats where just being a 12k body is still just very, very powerful because he's going to be able to break most security, because a lot of the megas that a lot of people are going to be playing with are going to be 12 and below. So if you combo him with Mach, then he could be up to 14, and that's just, again, really, really powerful, ensuring that you're going to be breaking a lot of security. So Zeed is just absolutely fantastic for this deck overall, and definitely really helps Blue Omnimon. Because after you use his Digiburst ability, then you could just Digivolve him into Omnimon, because the card really isn't going to be doing anything else other than just being that 12k body. Speaking of just vanilla 12k bodies, the next card I'm going to be running is going to be 4 copies of Plesiomon. So Plesiomon is really only in the deck for 2 reasons. The first is that 12k body, because again, if it's good on Zeed, it's good on Plesio, and what's really good about Plesio is the fact that he has a really low evo cost of 2, so that way you could just utilize your tamer to just Digivolve up into Plesio, and then utilize Plesio to then go into Omni. So that's just what makes Plesio really good, on top of which, again, Plesio paired up with Mach is just absolutely insane because it makes Plesio 14, and we don't necessarily care about a lot of our low-level inheritables because we basically have none, so we could even feel free to utilize Mach's ability. So having Plesio to ensure that we could go into Omnimon the same turn we Digivolve into Plesio is just still a very powerful play, and why we definitely still want to run Plesiomon. And then the last mega is going to be our only level 7, and that is going to be 3 copies of Omnimon. So the whole point of the deck is, for the most part, to just turbo up into Omnimon, so that way we could just utilize Omnimon to be as powerful and threatening as we possibly can. So Omnimon is still just a very important card, just because his when Digivolving ability acts as some really good removal, where it'll just delete one of the opponent's Digimon, and then all of the other Digimon if they share the same name as the one we initially deleted. So being able to delete at least one Digimon is already good, potentially more, just makes the card even better. And then he has this nice when attacking ability where you could unsuspend this Digimon by returning a level 6 from his Digivolution source to our hand, so that way we could reuse our level 6s and we could get multiple swings off with Omnimon. So those are 2 very powerful aspects to what makes Omnimon good, on top of the fact that he's a 15k body, and that's still just very powerful and very threatening. So Omnimon is still just a pretty decent card to be playing overall, especially if we could get up into him as fast as we can to help deal with the opponent's Digimon. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running only 4 copies of Hammerspark. So Hammerspark is still the best option that we currently have to be playing with, just because it has a very low play cost of 0, and we get to utilize its main ability to gain 1 memory. So this just allows us to make even more powerful plays, or make just plays that we were thinking about even possible. And then on top of which, it has the really nice security ability of gaining 2 memory. So when it's checked in the security, we could potentially make the opponent lose 2 memory. So Hammerspark is still a really good option, therefore we are going to be playing it. And then the last card of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Davis. So Davis is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer, and we really like Davis because he also is helping with the deck's overall consistency, because he has this nice on-play ability where we get to check the top 3 cards of our deck, then we get to add 1 blue and 1 green Digimon among them into our hand, and then the rest go onto the bottom. Well, we're not running any green Digimon, so that means off of his ability, we're always going to be adding just a blue. But digging for our cards is still very, very good. And then on top of which, we are running Lobomon to Digivolve on top of Davis. So if we have multiple Davises out on the field, then we could utilize one of them to Digivolve into Lobomon, all making the card just very good to be playing overall. On top of his security ability just being the classic Tamer ability, where you get to play him for free, and that's just good. And then, as I mentioned before, there's just a whole bunch of different ways and different routes in which you could take to really build Omnimon and make Omnimon as threatening and potent as you possibly can. So I just have a couple of cards highlighting all of that potential, and this is just scratching the surface because Omnimon is still just a good level 7, so you could pair him up with really any blue deck you want to feel like running, and he still just works. But for Omnimon to be as powerful as he possibly can be, there are just a couple of routes that I would personally prefer in order to make Omnimon as good as he possibly can. So some of the cards that are worth highlighting is you could run Gomamon, just because this BT01 version of Gomamon is good for his inheritable of on delete gain a memory. So if we just sit on a blocker, that's just already pretty good. Or if we aggress with Tobiumon or any of our other champions we feel like running, then we could utilize his ability to just gain us a memory to make even more powerful follow-up plays possible. Then we also have access to Vmon, so this is the BT03 Vmon, and this Vmon is still really good just because he natively has jamming, so he's always going to be a huge threat to deal with just because he's going to be a form of consistent damage. And then if you wanted to play into trashing the opponent's evolution sources, you could be running the Promo Gomamon, just because the Promo Gomamon has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn once per turn, when you trash a Digivolution source off of one of your opponent's Digimon, then you'll gain a memory. So that's just pretty good because you want to gain as much memory as possible, so that way you can make very powerful follow-up plays. Then you could also think about running Garurumon. So the BT01 Garurumon is good because he has this nice on-play ability of being able to unsuspend one of your Digimon. So if the opponent gives you lots of memory, then you could utilize this ability to just gain another attack. Or if you really wanted to, what this card is actually supposed to be utilized with is the Metal Garurumon from BT01, because he has a nice ability where when attacking, you get to play one level 4 or lower Digimon from his inheritable as another Digimon. So that's the best way to trigger Garurumon's ability is with Metal Garurumon, and Metal Garurumon is still just a very good card to play as a whole, just because splitting the stacks, whether it's off of Garurumon or into something else, doesn't really matter. Just creating extra bodies is very, very threatening. And then on top of which, he evos for 3, so off of our memory fixing tamer, it allows us to go up into Metal, then swing, then play Omni right afterward, which again is still just a very powerful line of play. Then, if you wanted to, you could also think about running the Promo Garurumon line, just because the Promo Garurumon line is really good because it has the nice inheritable ability where when attacking, if this Digimon's name contains Garurumon, then you get to draw a card. So if you're running Metal and if you're running Zeed, then between both of them, you're going to have a Mega with Garurumon in its name, and you could be drawing cards, and drawing cards is always good. On top of which, if you're running the Promo Wear, that's an easy way to get cards into your hand for his inheritable ability, where if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, then this Digimon gains security attack +1, so that way your Mega can try to deal as much damage as it possibly can, and on top of which, this wear is actually still pretty decent because he has this nice when attacking once per turn, you get to unsuspend this Digimon if he has a Garurumon underneath him. So just being able to have an ultimate that can multi-attack can be very threatening onto the opponent, especially the later the game goes when they don't have much security or any security at all. So it's just, again, another really solid card to think about. Then you could also play a little bit more into the hybrids if you really wanted to. So Beowulfmon is just an absolutely obnoxious card to just sit on and passively deal damage, just because it's going to be really hard for the opponents to interact with him, because he has this ability where during the opponent's turn, while this Digimon is Digivolved on top of a hybrid or a blue tamer, then this Digimon can't be attacked, so it really limits the opponent's options on how they want to interact with him, and that's just really powerful, on top of him just natively having jamming. Then, if you are continuing to play into the sub-theme of attacking the inheritable sources, you have Garurumon from the starter deck to give your higher levels security tech +1. So again, that's just really, really dangerous just because you can hit multiple security checks and that just applies lots of pressure. Or you could take a more defensive route and play Shakuamon just to try to limit what the opponent is trying to do and how they can aggress. And then you just have a whole bunch of other really powerful megas that you could be playing and interacting with. So you could run Vikemon just because he's interacting with the whole sub-theme of attacking the opponent's evolution sources and making sure they have a Digimon with none. So that way your Vikemon will gain +1000 and security tech +1. And then if you pair it up with either of the Garurumons, then he'll be dealing 3 security checks. And then to play along with that sub-theme, we even have Regulacusemon, which Regulacusemon is just Value Engine incarnate, just because he has this very powerful when attacking ability, where you get to trash the bottom Digivolution source off of one of the opponent's Digimon, and then when we do, we get to draw a card and gain a memory. Or if you wanted to, you could play MachGaogamon, just because Mirage is just a very decent card on his own, because he has this nice when Digivolving ability where you get to gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in the opponent's hand. So if they are playing a more control style deck or just an average style of deck, then you're usually going to be able to Digivolve Mirage for 3 or 2, or even as low as 1, which is really, really good because it's just good tempo. And then on top of that, he even has his own other ability where during your turn, this Digimon is unblockable. And then as far as the only option that I feel like is really noteworthy is going to be Cocytus Breath. So if you're going to be running any other option in this style of deck, it should be Cocytus Breath, just because Cocytus Breath, for all intents and purposes, is Blue's Gaia Force, except it is bouncing instead of deleting, which could be really obnoxious for the opponent because it's just a good anti-tempo card. So Cocytus Breath is just solid overall. And then if you wanted to run another tamer, you could think about running Matt Ishida. So this is the BT01 version of Matt, and this is just a good memory fixing tamer, on top of which he could also passively attack the opponent's evolution sources, all depending on what you build and how you build it. But for the most part, this is just what I settled on, just because I felt like this was pretty consistent and this was pretty powerful between all of the lines of play, just getting to Omnimon as quickly as I possibly can, and trying to close out the game as efficiently as I possibly can. But like I said, this is just scratching the surface, and there's so much more that you could do with this deck that the possibilities, they're not like endless, there's just a lot. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel. And on top of which, I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. So following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook. So whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.